Welcome to BodyHacking Build a Better You, the podcast where we unlock the secret to living a longer, healthier life and create a bloom zone in our life and within our family. I'm your host, Michaela Morrell, and I'm here to provide you with the tools and knowledge to empower you to build a better you, one essential building block at a time. Today's episode is a sequence to last week's episode. And today we're going to explain a few reasons why Joandra's body might have reacted the way it did. So if you're curious on the science behind it, join us for today's episode. I want to remind you that this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Read the disclaimer in the show notes, and I want to remind you to always consult your healthcare provider if you plan to make any dietary changes. I'm so happy that Joe was like, let's do this right away. So we're doing it right away, and I still have Joe with me here if he needs to correct something of the things I remember from our conversation. No, but okay. So a couple of things that Joandrew was struggling with. If you haven't heard his story already, you can go back and hear his whole story in the previous episode. But it was extreme fatigue. It was food allergies, bananas and grapes in particular. And you said one more. Which one was it more?
It was beets. Yeah.
So beets as well. And struggling also with IBS, needing to run to the bathroom every time it had been food involved, basically. And I want to also a lot of brain fog. So in what kind of settings did you notice that you had brain fog?
Yeah. So my brain fog, I had a gist of what brain fog was, but when I would speak to people, I had to fight really hard to stay awake. It's like when I would open my mouth to speak with somebody, it's like I was falling asleep and I had a hard time focusing on what they were saying and how to respond to what they were telling me.
Isn't that every woman's dream that her husband will be so tired or having so much brain fog that when you're having a conversation, he's falling asleep? No, but that can be very frustrating and annoying, I assume.
Yes, it did actually create a lot of issues with me and my wife. I would listen to her speak to me and I couldn't respond to her. Not that I didn't want to, but if I did, I was gonna be exhausted. And she would tell me, "Well, how come you don't ever talk back?" I can't talk back to you. And I didn't know how to explain it to her.
Because it was not yours to control. It was your body that was controlling it, and it was hard to like, how do you tell someone when they haven't experienced it? So, yeah. So, I want to go ahead and get started talking about the brain fog. The brain fog can be due to a lot of different issues. Since I also know that Joandra struggled with IBS, I'm going to explain brain fog from a perspective that is related to your IBS, which I know it is. And I also know that your extreme fatigue is related to your IBS. And I also know that your food allergies are related to your IBS. It all comes down to gut health. It all comes down to cellular health. And I don't know if I have actually had the time to explain it in this depth to you. So I think this is going to be a fun conversation for you to listen into live here too. But if we're starting with the gut, our gut is in charge of so many things. And for you to understand what's going on in the gut, it's important for you to understand how the gut looks like. So when you're looking into a gut, you are having a very, very, very thin cell wall. The gut wall is just like one cell thick, and a cell is very, very, very small. So it is so, so thin, but it's folded back and forth, and you're like unfolding the whole gut. It is big as a soccer field, basically. But you could never fit something that is that big into your stomach unless it's a very, very small molecule. So the cells are so tiny, but the cells need to hold together, and they're holding together with a kind of a glue. But what is happening when we're struggling with leaky gut is that there are different types of foods that are triggering leaky gut. There's different types of medications triggering it, stress is triggering it, bad bacteria is triggering it. And it sometimes our gut can be fooled by our immune system that we have harmful bacteria that needs to be flushed out. And that is also opening up the cells to flush more things out to make it go faster through your gut, which is then causing you to needing to run to the bathroom and having diarrhea a lot of the times. So that is one part of the gut that you have to understand. And then we have the gut lining. So inside of our gut, we're having gut lining that is protecting the food and the acids that are coming from our stomach. When it start passing through our intestines, it's have a very s- harsh pH level for the gut wall. So we have a gut lining that is protecting the wall from everything that is coming. This gut lining can be broken, and when it is broken, it's pretty hard to restore it. And a lot of people are struggling with a gut lining that is broken, and that is making us more prone for having leaky gut, and that is making us more prone for having an overreactive immune system, and also making us prone for having food particles leaking out in our bloodstream that is not supposed to be there. It can be, I mean, even if the food is good, even if the vitamins, minerals are good, if they haven't been broken down into smaller particles that they like as small particles that they can just travel through the cells, they're going to cause problems because our systems will not recognize them and they cannot utilize them when they're coming into big particles. For example, if we're just making it easy for you to understand, if you are wanting the benefits of an apple, you take it in small pieces and you chew it and you eat it. But what if you were unable to chew it and you would just have a whole apple and it wouldn't fit in your mouth? Even if you have it in front of you, you cannot have any benefits from it. That would cause the body problems because it will not be able to utilize what you're having. So even if you're eating healthy, even if you're taking supplementations, if these particles are leaking out before they're broken down by the good gut bacteria, they're not going to be able to be beneficial to you in your body. And our immune system is going to have to go and attack it because it's a foreigner. So that is really what's going on. And when that happens over and over and over again, we're having an immune system that is getting used to particles coming that they need to fight. When that happens, that immune system can become overreactive. So in your case, it's never the banana that is the problem. It's never the grapes. It is our immune system have learned to be overreactive, and then they have just learned to respond to those molecules a little bit harsher. So you have a bigger reaction towards them versus having a reaction to if you would have an apple, for example, in your case. And a lot of different people have reactions to different things, but it's the same issue that our immune system have been triggered by it so many times that they have started building up antibodies against them, basically, and having a very fierce reaction towards them. That is why when we're looking at food sensitivity tests, I think that that is a pretty big waste of money because the food sensitivity test usually just shows you what are you usually eating that is causing the body stress. And it's because it's leaking out in your bloodstream that is then affecting our immune system to react towards it. And that will show up as a food sensitivity in your blood when you're taking a test. But if you would fix your leaky gut issue and your immune system issue, then 6 months down the road, the foods you used to be allergic to, you're usually not allergic to them anymore. So that's why when you were struggling with your IBS, your food sensitivities also started appearing and have becoming an issue. I forgot to ask you, Joandrew, how long had you been struggling with IBS?
That I have been struggling with maybe about 3 to 4 years when I noticed it was an issue, and I thought that maybe trying to fix it through exercise and eating different, that I would fix it, but I was very undisciplined. I was a very emotional eater, emotional spender, so when I got emotional, I ran to things that filled me for a good feel moment that wasn't good for my body, so even though I knew subconsciously I had to do something and change the way I was eating, when my emotions would get me down, I ran to stuff that wasn't good for my body. And so I couldn't actually fix that. I just thought that, well, because I'm not fixing it, it's just a thing that's going to happen. And I didn't know how to fix it. So, I mean, with that, it was probably like 4 years that I've noticed my IBS issues. And
Okay, so he has struggled with food sensitivity about 5 to 6 years, and then IBS issues about 4 years. But prior to struggling with IBS, we usually have gut health issues for 5, 10 years prior. So it doesn't matter if it was the food sensitivities that started first as a big symptom or the IBS that started showing as symptoms first. It is still gut health related issues we're talking about that are all leading up to all of these symptoms. Okay, so with that, I'm saying that you do not have to have IBS to have food sensitivities and still understand that your food sensitivities comes from you struggling with your gut health. Because there's a lot of people that are struggling with their gut health that doesn't have IBS, like me. When I was struggling with my gut health, I was the opposite. I had constipation and never needed to go to the bathroom. So there's multiple ways it can show. It can also be that you're struggling with migraines and that is really a symptom of you struggling with leaky gut. Anyways, more on that in another episode where we can go through all of the details about what symptoms are really a symptom of leaky gut. Okay, so when the food particles and bacteria, and it can be good bacteria, it can be bad bacteria, but things are leaking out in the bloodstream every time you eat something. And when that happens, the body have to fight. The body have to go in. It becomes a war in the body and it goes really quick. The blood transport nutrients around in our blood so quickly that whenever we start having things leaking out in our blood, it really quickly goes around in our whole body and up to our brain. And when it comes up to our brain and the blood and brain barrier is trying to protect the brain from all the foreigners that are coming, and they don't want to have particles up there that is not supposed to be there. So our immune system is working really, really hard. Our blood and brain barrier is working really, really hard. And that is why a lot of people that is experiencing fatigue, and especially fatigue after dinners, after breakfast, after lunch, every time you have been eating something, you feel like laying down on the couch and take a nap or take a longer nap. But every time it's symptom of you struggling with leaky gut. And that's why you're experiencing such a big fatigue. But that is also why your brain is struggling with the type of fatigue and brain fog that you struggle with, where you felt you weren't able to keep a conversation going. You couldn't comprehend what people were saying to you and how you should respond to it because it just took too much energy.
yes, pretty much you hit the nail on the head. And another thing that I don't know, I was just thinking about right now, since I'm dealing with fixing my gut health, my wife and my kids, they can't tell when I go to the restroom anymore. So I don't know if that's something that is part of fixing your gut, is that it's not smelly anymore, but I feel better. My fatigue, it's all gone. So yeah.
Yeah. So that is one part of the fatigue, especially up in our brain and brain fog. Another thing that we have to talk about, because we're talking about brain fog as well and the extreme fatigue that comes not only like extreme fatigue because you have been working out, but just from being and you feel your brain is mentally exhausted. Then we also have to talk about brain health, because the first blood test we took on you, it showed that you had very low levels of DHA, very depleted, and you have been depleted for many years. So it is important to understand that our fats in our brain is built up with 60% of DHA, that is fatty acids that come from omega-3. And if our brain is depleted in that year after year after year after year, it's not going to be able to function as optimally. The brain will take other particles and try to keep on building up a brain, but it's not going to be optimal. It's not going to have the same properties. It's not going to function as it's supposed to. And because of that, we're not going to have as good cell production either, because when you're building up the cell membrane with the wrong building blocks, the cell membrane becomes harder and less permeable, which is then causing our body to struggle with getting the vitamins and minerals the cells need to be able to produce energy, because everything is energy. Without energy, we would be dead. And every single cell need energy to be able to function. And inside of our cells, we're having small factories creating that energy. But if they're not getting the building blocks they need, they're not going to be able to produce that energy. So if our cell membranes are too hard because we built up our brain with the wrong building blocks, the brain is going to struggle with producing the energy it needs to be able to have a clear thought. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, that does make a lot of sense.
So that's why it's so important to not just look at one thing, because there are so many people that's like, oh, I just want to start with one thing to see how that is going. But we really have to understand the body and understand for optimal health, we have to optimize a lot of different things. We need to look at the gut health. We need to look at the vitamin and mineral intake. We need to look at our omega levels. We need to look at the body as a whole. You wouldn't take your car in to, like, if there's something wrong with your car, you wouldn't just take it in and say, hey, just change the wheels and I will see if it's rolling any better. Like, when it's really the motor that they're struggling with. It doesn't matter if you would change the wheels. It doesn't matter if you would spend $3,000 changing your wheels to the highest brand, like the best brand out there. You have to understand what's wrong in your body, and we have to target it from all different areas. Otherwise, it won't be able to function optimally anyway. But it is problematic because a lot of people are out there and a lot of people have tried a lot and they haven't seen any effect. And that is due to most supplementations being a sham. Most healthy foods we're eating is not containing as much vitamin and mineral as they should. So even if we're eating healthy, it's really hard to get enough. And even if you're able to get enough, if you have struggled with food absorption problems for 10 years, you're still not going to be able to absorb it. So a lot of people have tried for 6 months, for 8 months, and they're not really feeling any benefits. And then they're giving up, thinking that food maybe wasn't that big of a deal anyway. It doesn't matter what I'm eating. I'm actually feeling better when I'm eating pasta than when I'm eating a salad. Oh, because it's easier for the body to digest pasta than salad. And if you're having a malfunctioning gut health, the salad is going to be hard to digest. But does that mean that the pasta is healthy for you? No, it doesn't. So those are a few aspects of what you have been dealing with, why your body is now able to function better, why your brain is now able to function better, because your gut health is completely changed. We have changed the gut health in a way where we are repairing the gut lining, we're preventing leaky gut. We're also increasing the good gut bacteria you have, not only in one place, but throughout your whole gut. And we're not doing it with probiotics. If you think that probiotics is the go-to, go and listen to my other podcast I let out. I'll link it in the show notes, the right number, because I don't remember it in my head. But it's a very good episode for you to understand pro and prebiotics. And when we're restoring your gut health, that is going to reflect in everything. It's going to reflect in your skin. It's going to reflect in your brain. It's going to reflect in every single cell of your body, because your body is going to function better. We're going to lower the levels of inflammation throughout your whole body. And your body is going to thank you for you taking these steps to change. Another thing I wanted to say also with the leaky gut, since your wife was struggling with achy joints, is that the inflammation from the leaky gut usually ends up in joints, because if you're having particles flowing around in your body, they usually get stuck where you have different bends in your body. And if you have a particle getting stuck there and the inflammation goes to attack there, it can damage things around these areas that is then triggering the body to rebuild, which is then triggering the body to kind of create arthritis eventually if you're ignoring these pains and letting it go on for year after year after year. So if you are now listening to this episode and know that you have achy pains too, just understand that we have to fix the leaky gut tissue and we have to increase the cell function in your body. Jandrew, you're sitting here now. You can ask me any question you want. Is there anything else you want me to explain about the health or how things are working together?
I was just thinking right now, since we've been doing this, that I'm actually sitting through this whole session because before I fixed my gut lining or working on fixing my health, I wouldn't be able to sit here this long. I'd be scrolling around. I'd be trying to get somewhere because I wouldn't be able to sit down comfortably and just have this chat and be on your podcast where you're educating people on health. I wouldn't be able to do it. And it just blows my mind right now. Like the things that we're doing, the things that you're teaching me, and how it's working in my body, and being able to understand some of the things that you're telling me. I don't know all of them because there's different ways of understanding the body and how it functions, and that's your expertise, not mine. But I'm learning it, and so I just find it fascinating that what we're doing, what you're teaching me, and how it's making my body feel. Like I'm in my mind right now, I'm processing like, wow, I can actually sit here almost 2 hours and I'm fine.
He's able to hear me, he's able to respond to me, and he's able to listen. No, but I know that that is something you have been. And Jandra, I am so grateful for all the WhatsApp messages on updates I'm getting too. He's so joyful every time. He's like, I just remember this. I just remembered this. I've also changed. And it's so fun to get the feedback because that is what makes me every morning when I wake up feel like, oh, who can I help today? Like what person can we bless today? And how can we keep on educating the world on just learn how your body function and take responsibility for taking care of it. People are spending so much money on extra things on their car. They're priming it and waxing it and doing things, but they spend very little money on themselves because they don't understand how to keep our body from oxidizing, how to nourish our body in the best way. Because a lot of things that we have been doing prior have been guest based. We haven't had the evidence, we haven't had the data if it's actually working. But nowadays we're living in 2025 and it looks a lot different than it did 10 years ago. So go out there, understand it more, keep on listening to my podcast. And if this was beneficial, share it with someone that you were thinking about today. Thank you guys for being here with us today. And we'll see you next week. Bye-bye. Hey guys, if you enjoyed today's episode, I encourage you to do one thing for me. Think of one person you want to share this podcast with and copy the link and send it right away. Thanks for playing an important role in the Blue Zone community. And if you want to keep on building a better you, one essential building block at a time, hit that subscribe button. See you in the next episode.